all right. Well, I'd like to welcome VK3 WIM, Wayne, one of our members, up to the microphone. And he's going to give us a talk on summits on the air. So put your hands together for Wayne and take over.
Do you need to use the mixer or
Okay.
what's this thing?
No, it's all gone dead. Is that microphone still working?
The microphone's working.
Okay.
I don't think this.
Oh, the heaters went off. That's right.
Don't think.
No, just use that one. The other one's live.
Rightio.
Just let me know when you're back.
Alrighty. So tonight I'm here to talk about summits on the air, or SOTA. I don't often call it summits on the air. Actually, we're just used to calling it SOTA this and SOTA that. I think I'll switch over to this side. Summits on the air. Oh, it's not a presentation of the NERG. You can see where I've done some changes from when I presented it in 12th of April 2012. So this is not exactly what they got, but you're not the test dummies on this one. So what is Summits on the Air, or SOTA? It's an award program that's based around summits, as the name suggests. But also operation is on battery, solar or human power, so no car batteries, no generators or so on. What is a summit? Well, in the case of Victoria, myself, I've gone around and looked at maps and so on and worked out a whole series of summits that are in Victoria that have at least 150 metres clear surrounds from the highest point, and that is called Prominence. In Victoria it has to be 150 metres, although some associations around the world, like Belgium for instance, have 100 metre prominence requirement. The program operates all modes and all amateur radio bands. So what I'll do is, I'm not sure if this thing's working. Just have a look at what exactly is prominence. This doesn't come up that clearly on this display, but this is a map of near Tidal River at Wilson's Promontory, and this is a contour map. You can see contour lines going around. For something to have 150 metres prominence from the highest point, any direction you go, the land needs to fall by more than 150 metres. In the case of Mount Latrobe, which is here, it is 750 metres high, or 754. And this first little circle going around it is the 700 metre contour line, and the next one is the 600 metre contour line. And so it has a prominence of at least 150 metres, because that goes all the way around. This is Mount Leonard up here, and you can see there's a line going around, another one going around, and then there's another one sort of making its way, a bit of a longer path going around. So it's got at least 200 metres prominence. Now everything on Wilson's Promontory is either directly or indirectly got prominence to Mount Latrobe because it's the highest point in Wilson's Promontory. If you've got a high hill and then it goes down and there's another hill coming up and then going down further, the lower hill needs to have 150 metres prominence to the higher hill. The higher hill, in the case of Mount Latrobe, its prominence is actually to something outside Wilson's Promontory, but we don't really care about that. Once we know it's got at least 150 metres, that's fine. We can see that it's got that. It's 750 metres high, and its prominence to something away from Wilson's Promontory, it'd be going through Yankee Isthmus, and the low point on that would be about 20 metres. So its prominence is actually about 750 metres. But this thing here is Mount Leonard, not Mount St Leonard, is a SOTA summit in Wilson's Promontory. So is Mount Oberon. Little Oberon is not, because it only drops about 60 or 70 metres down at this saddle here to go up Mount Oberon. This little point here is actually not defined in SOTA, but even looking at it today, it's 160 metres down to this saddle here. So that'll be defined on the next round of updates, which is... What about Wilson and Ramsey? Yeah, they're both in. Mount Wilson is going to be a very rare activation, but I do know some people that have been there. Yeah,
Tall grass, it's a wonderful place.
So, but yeah, Mount Wilson, Mount Ramsay, Latrobe, there's 2 places on the VK range, along Cathedral Range, Mount Boulder, Mount Norgate, Hunter, a mountain near Johnny Suey Cove, the SOTA summits on Wilson's Promontory. So the only one that you can get to by track is Oberon, but this one will be going in the next update, which is probably 6 months away. Now Peter asked me to talk a little bit about around McLaughlin's Lookout. The highest point around there is a point to the west or northwest of McLaughlin's Lookout, and then from that point, all other places such as McLaughlin Lookout itself, and there's a few other summits in that area, but none of those have 150 metres prominence to this high point. And this high point, which is about sort of 5k from McLaughlin's Lookout or to the northwest, is about 870 metres high, and I've traced the 700 metre contour. It goes for about 100k all the way around, and so it has at least 170 metres prominence, so it will qualify, but nothing else inside that big long circle that goes almost up to sort of not quite a wood end, but it goes quite some distance around. Nothing else. It doesn't actually, this place doesn't have a name because it's not really, like it's basically the top of a ridge. But another thing that's a bit like that is Mount Cowley.
It's where we operated from in 2007.
The Otway Ranges have only got 2 SOTA summits because only 2 places meet this 150 metre prominence. The Otways is essentially like a big long ridge that climbs to the highest point at Mount Cowley and then works its way back down again. And so while it does go up and down a little bit, it sort of, from Cowley it goes down and up a little bit and then down and up a little bit, and there's nothing that goes up enough for 150 metres, which is what something would need to have its own prominence. But for people that want to participate in SOTA, you don't really need to worry about any of this. This is, if a summit's defined, you can activate it and you can chase someone who's activating it. And you don't need to worry about working out if it's got prominence or not. If you've got a favourite summit that's not in the program and you want it included, that's when, and you'll be talking to me then, that's when you need to worry about prominence, because I'll be worried about it. We'll need to see on the maps that it has it in order for it to be included next time.
Does Mount Boulder have prominence?
Which one? Mount Boulder?
Boulder, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
It does. I thought it might. Yeah.
So yeah, both Boulder and Norgate have got prominence. Norgate is lower, so it has prominence to Boulder, and it's through pretty much where the road goes down towards Roaring Meg. That's the lowest point there. Boulder is, because it's high, it has prominence to, well, going down through, right down the hill and going up towards Mount Wilson. But like, people get excited about those kind of things, but I don't really, as long as it's got 150 metres, we don't really care what it has prominence to. Yeah, as long as it's 100, we know it's more than 150 metres, and so once we know that, we don't need to investigate that one any further. Now, looking at what SOTA in VK, it's operational here in VK3. There's 609 summits that are in the program at the moment. So it's contrasting that with islands on the air, which there's about, they've limited to 1,200 around the world. There's no such limit in SOTA. And so each summit that's defined in the program has its own code. And so there's not a whole lot of summits that are clumped together. I guess the other side of that is that in some places, I think there's one place in America where they've got 20,000 summits. So some of them are not going to get activated for a while, but like in the UK, they've got 160 or 170. All of them have been activated. Some of them have been activated hundreds of times. I think one of them's coming up to 1,000 activations, but all of them have been activated at least 10 times. That probably won't happen in Victoria for some time, but we've got a good amount to play with. It's broken up into 9 regions, although one doesn't have summits, 8 regions with summits. The central region, which is based on the central weather forecasting or fireband region, includes Mount Dandenong, Flinders, Mount St Leonard, Arthur's Seat, Macedon and Donabuang. There's about 31 of them in total in the central region. most but not all of them have got good 2 metre access into Melbourne. VK1, they've put their application into the SOTA management team. I'd expect that to be going by late 2012. And there's some efforts happening in VK2, VK5, but I wouldn't expect them to actually be participating until next year sometime. I've got VK5 CZ coming over in 2 weeks to go through doing prominence and all that with VK5 summits. I've done about 30 of them, and I'm going to train him up to do the rest. So he's pretty keen. He's obviously keen enough to get on an aeroplane and come over here. So VK5 is probably, I'd imagine that's probably going to be going early next year.
Wayne, is there a website we can find where the various summits are located?
Yes, there is. There's actually quite a number of sources, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So, first looking at the activation. Obviously they happen on the top of mountaintops. They have to use the permitted amateur bands. No CB, obviously. Now, SOTA, you can use a motor vehicle to at least get part of the way there, so you're not required to walk, say, to Mount Dandenong from where you live. But there's a point where you can't use the vehicle as your final method of access to the summit. There's a different debate about what that means, but you can't literally drive to the summit, get out of your car, just walk 10 metres away and start operating. We can, but it's not going to be a SOTA activation. Your motor vehicle also cannot form part of a station. You can't have any cables or anything running out of the car. You can't use its battery. So the motor vehicle can't form any part of the station in any way. Which, there's a reason for that. Some places the motor vehicle simply can't form part of the station because there's no road that goes to the top of the summit. In a lot of cases in Victoria, there's not even a walking track that goes to the top of the summit. I activated a place called Hyde Hill, which was 400 metres from the nearest road, but it still took about an hour to get from that closest point up to the top through some interesting terrain. I found this fallen tree. It must have been fallen for well over 50, 60 years, and it was still sort of that high, the width of the trunk. So that thing would have been massive when it came down, but and it went for at least 50 metres along. So it would have been a huge tree. So there was a few obstacles like that to get through to get to the top of that summit. But given that, no motor vehicle use means that you're challenged to think of ways that you can power your radio, you can build lightweight antennas that can be carried without, like, that can be carried a reasonable distance. So there's an element of challenge which is a crucial part of the program, forcing people to make certain decisions and certain trade-offs that are in the spirit of the program. Lino?
Is there a definition, when you say you're operating from the summit, is there a definition of what's the summit? I mean, how close to the very peak the actual?
Yes, there is, and we'll talk about that in just a sec. It's on the next slide. Right, so you need to operate near the summit top. And so in VK3, that's 25 metres from the highest point of the summit. So within 25 vertical metres. Now, if you've got a very well-defined summit that pretty much goes up and then back down, on a map, say if it was 880 metres, then that minus 25 is 855. So as long as you're 855 metres or higher, and you could go from where you are to the top without it dropping down underneath the 855. So you can't be on a nearby hill that's almost as high, but there's a bit of a valley between you and the summit. There's got to be within 25 metres vertical height, and that's got to be unbroken. So if you were to look at a map where, say if it was 875, if you take off 25, that's 850. So the 850 contour line going around effectively is the boundary of the activation zone. So you can be anywhere in that activation zone and it counts as an activation, for provided you're of course not using a car battery, etc. Now if you look at this guy here operating, the top of the summit is actually over there, so he's down some distance from the top, but he's obviously fairly, like that thing there is obviously some tower associated near the top of the summit. So he's only about maybe 5 or so metres below the top. So he could actually go down the hill a little bit further, another 20 metres vertical distance down, and still be in the activation zone. Now there's a place I'm aware in Victoria that has a very long flat top, and it sort of rises a bit but goes along, and so the activation zone at that place is a good kilometre long, because it takes a kilometre for it to drop below 25 metres. So some activation zones can be quite large, others will be quite small, depending on how steep it is near the summit. We talked about it needs to be powered by battery, solar and human power. Another key point is activation points accumulate to the operator, not what call sign you use. So if you're say operating in a contest and you're using a particular call sign, you can still, but if it still meets the SOTA rules for an activation, the QSOs that you do accumulate to you. So if you had 3 or 4 people in there, then each of them can effectively activate the summit, so long as they meet the activation rules. So it accumulates to the operator, which is kind of quite handy in some. Of course, if you're up there for a contest as well, you might have to use one call sign for a multi-operator station, and so you might not necessarily be using your own call sign, but that doesn't prevent you from still claiming that activation for SOTA. Now, the general rules when it comes to an activation, you have to get one QSO. If you activate the summit, then it counts. There's a award that counts the number of unique summits that you've activated. But also, the SOTA program has points associated with the summit, and if you're going to get those points, then you need to get 4 QSOs. So there is a bit of a difference. You do activate with less than 4, but you don't get the points. And there's an award that counts the number of unique summits that you've activated, and there's an award that counts summit points. So to get those summit points, you need to get 4 QSOs. And the main trophy that is associated with these summit points is the Mountain Goat Award. So you need to get your 4 QSOs for it to count for that. Summit points can be claimed once a year for activators. It's different for chasers, but for activators it's once per UTC year. So it is possible on December 31 or actually January 1st early in the morning to go up and activate a summit, and then midnight UTC is 11 AM during daylight savings time, and activate it again after 11 AM and get it a second time. You can activate it once a UTC year. This guy here is G4SSH, who I've worked twice. He's the first, that was the first GVK SOTA contact. There's been a few since then. Chasers can use any legal configuration for their station, and that includes being on other summits. Some people get into summit to summit type activations. There's not too much of that in VK just yet, but there's a whole sort of sub branch of SOTA that's into that. But he has never activated. He's got more than 58,000 SOTA points over goodness knows how many people he's chased that have activated all over the world, but he has never walked up a summit. So SOTA is not just for people that climb mountains. It's also the other half of it is sitting in the shack and chasing. Now, unlike the activators who can only claim points for a summit once a year, chasers can claim once every UTC day. So you can work activators on the same summit many times throughout the year. You can work them more than once a day, you just can't claim the points more than once a day. But that could help if you've got 3 guys up there all activating together. It's still handy to go and work each one. You only get to claim the points once, but each of them needs to get 4 QSOs. So if you give each of them a QSO, they're a quarter of their way on to getting what they need. So you can work more than once a day. You only get credit for it once a day. Also, for activators only, there's a seasonal bonus. For higher summits that are 1,200 metres or higher in Victoria, there's an extra 3 points. And if you can look at this picture here, we've got a guy who's doing a 2 metre activation. Nice. He's got his. He's obviously skied in. He's got his ski poles, mast with a little 2 metre, 3-element yagi happening there. There's a lot of that going on in the UK. There's a lot of 2 metre activity in the UK, seeing these kind of things around. The main awards for SOTA are the Mountain Goat Award for those that activate, and the Shack Sloth. Because obviously it's pretty slothful hanging around the shack all day. So if you're going to do enough of that, you clearly are a Shack Sloth. Each summit is worth between 1 and 10 points, both for activators and chasers. The activators, if they activate a bonus, they get an extra 3 points. And these trophies are awarded 1,000 lifetime points.
The qualifications of the Mountain Goat Award, if you went up something like Mount Feathertop, which is 11.4k from the road out of Harryville, up under those birds at the top. And if you did it in winter, you could get some multipliers.
Well, if you do it in winter, it's worth 13 points.
And the Mountain Goat too.
What's that?
Would it classify as the Mountain Goat?
It doesn't give you the Mountain Goat. You need to do it. Well, like you could go, for instance, the top of Mount Buffalo. There's 4 summits up there that have got their own 150 metres prominence. And so if you went and activated each of those in winter, 2 of which require you to go off track, that would be 40 points plus 12 bonus points, so 52 points for doing those 4. And you could do them in 2 days. But that would be a bit of an effort.
Jack and I have done the rooftop, put operators right across the rooftop one, so we're sort of familiar with that area.
I've spoken to a few operators that are keen to do some winter activations of these high summits. So there are going to be activations up the top in some of these places in the middle of winter. So there is some people here that are into that. So it's something worth chasing. There's also other awards in the form of certificates, and these are for both activators, chasers, and also shortwave listeners. I think the shortwave listeners can get effectively the Shack Sloth trophy, but these are 100, 200, 500, 1,000, 2, 5, 10, 20, and so on. The leading activator around the world's just got over 5,000 points, but G4SSH has got over 58,000 chaser points. So in some respects, you could consider a chaser points sort of worth 1/10 of an activator point in the way that it all works out. But the main trophies are both at 1,000 points. So it's kind of easier to get the Shack Sloth than what it is to get the Mountain Goat. And a lot more people around the world have got Shack Sloth trophies as opposed to Mountain Goat trophies. The program started just based on points, but it didn't take too long for people to start considering how many unique summits that they've activated. The leading activator has activated, I think it's 520 or something summits. Chasers have successfully chased people over a lot more than 1,000. And you can get the Shack Sloth trophy again once you've chased 1,000 unique summits. I think the leading one there is like 3,000 or 4,000. I don't know that number as well, but
what defines a unique summit?
If you work with someone on Mount Dandenong, then you have worked Mount Dandenong at least once, so it counts as unique. If you work someone there again, then it's obviously not unique. But then if you work someone on Mount St Leonard, that's a new summit, a second unique summit, and so on. So if you work someone on every summit in Victoria, that would be 609 unique summits. So to get 1,000, you have to work people outside of VK3.
Can you do it in winter?
Well, there's only 609 summits, so you can't get more than 609 unique summits in Victoria. You have to work someone outside of Victoria.
No, but you get more points if you go up in winter.
Yeah, but this is about uniques. So each summit is basically worth 1 point. It doesn't matter if it's a 10-pointer or a 1-pointer. And I think that's probably a thing to talk about is in SOTA, while there's obviously a lot of challenging going at Mount Feathertop in winter, SOTA is not just about those sort of right out there type, need mountain climbing or need crampons and ice axes or whatever, which Tim Holding didn't have when he tried to go during winter, but also just going up Arthur's Seat is a lot of fun in its own right. So that's just as much, well, it's only a 1 point activation, but when I went up there with a little 2 metre FM handheld with just a little quarter wave rubber ducky on the top, then like that was a great little fun activation. So it's not just about the extreme type activations. The program is a lot broader than that. As well as the uniques, there's also a Mountain Explorer Award, which is either activating or chasing summits in 5, 10, 15, 20 or all associations. Actually, for chasers, it's the Mountain Hunter. I've got Mountain Hunter on the next page, but there's a VHF version of that. This Mountain Hunter may get upgraded to more levels because SOTA is becoming much more international these days. It used to be focused more in Europe, but now there's associations in more and more places around the world, and people are, so some kind of DX type award, like I'm discussing with the management team, something that's based on DXCC, but SOTA activations. Sooner or later it'll be possible to get DXCC SOTA. Whether it's going to be a literal DXCC or whether it's going to be something a bit different is still being worked out. There is a VHF version of Mount Hunter. There's a all-band version of this, but the VHF band version, obviously the UK's got 4 metres, but 4 metres or higher, again in 5, 10, 15 associations. The Mountain Hunter all bands is obviously all bands, and there is a worked all association version of that, which is going to be very hard to do on 4 metres or higher, or for us 2 metres or higher. But the DX is becoming an increasingly interesting part of SOTA. The awards can be, of course, endorsed, any reasonable endorsement. Not every SOTA activation is QRP. Quite a number in the UK aren't. Probably the majority are, because the problem with not being QRP is you've got to carry it up. Not being QRP means bigger batteries and so on, so life's too short for QRP, but the batteries are too heavy for QRO. So a lot of them are QRP, but not everything. I'm personally trying to at least get 4 contacts on each summit that are QRP, so I can get that QRP endorsement, even if not all my activations are QRP. Now, the way you go about claiming awards, it's all database driven. This website here, www.sotadata.org.uk, is where you go to, there's actually quite a lot you can do on that site, and you can download anyone's log in a format, and there's another website we'll talk about later where you can do all this analysis on it. So if you're into crunching numbers, then there's a lot you can do with SOTA, because you can look at anyone's log and not just your own. Mind you, if you've worked someone and for some reason you screwed up when you logged it, or you, like in one case, I used a spreadsheet and it dropped one record out, and this guy's emailing me the next day. It's like this is my call sign, this is the exchange, like where it's not in the log, what's going on? So some guys are pretty keen about that. There's places to log for chasers and activators. Shortwave listening is not done through there. There's another way to do that, which is kind of a little bit not as convenient. They're working on that one. There's no QSLs required. Probably, I'd say about maybe a third of SOTA chasers will use mainly Logbook of the World, a little bit of EQSL, but mainly Logbook of the World. Management team can audit claims, but practically, unless there's a lot of evidence that you're claiming stuff that there isn't, no one else is putting something in, then they're not going to worry too much. It's not like you're going to have every QSO scrutinised when it comes to making a claim. Like at the end of the day, if you claim and you haven't done it, then you always know the award's fake anyway. So it's I don't think it really does you much good looking at a fake award all the time, but if you know you've done it, you know you've done it. But at the end of the day, I'd find that 70 to 80% of my contacts logged in the database have a contact come, like have the chaser is also logged and bringing it back. So there is quite a lot of match up. This is the SOTA Data website. So in here you need to create an account, which is easy enough to do, and you need to choose an association, which of course for us is VK3. But if you know anyone else that's not from VK3, they can still create an account using VK3, and then once associations for other places in VK are created, then they can be moved across at that time. But otherwise they can't log anything. So a VK2 can quite happily use the VK3 association as their home association. Just looking at sort of the characteristics of SOTA across some of the bands, 40 metres CW and SSB is by far the most common SOTA QSO. More CW these days, but there's still a lot of SSB. When SOTA first got started, it was all 2 metre FM, but it didn't take too long before it became a bit of 2 metre SSB and then moved over to the HF bands, SSB. But over time, CW has been growing to the point where it's now 45% of all SOTA QSOs. There's enough SOTA activity on SSB, in most of the Victorian activity is SSB, but there's enough, I guess if you're interested in SOTA DX, then CW is obviously pretty handy. And what's tended to happen is a lot of people that are involved in SOTA have either learnt CW for the first time if they didn't need it to get licensed, or they haven't used it ever since they got their licence and they're trying to brush up and relearn because there's a lot of CW that does go on. I've learnt CW for SOTA's sake basically, and just about every activation I do on HF I'm getting a big pile up happening from Europe, which is a lot of fun. 20 metres and 15 metres are used a bit more on the cycle at the moment. 30 metres is increasing in use for SOTA. There's quite a lot of SOTA action in Europe on 30 metres. I haven't done anything on 30 metres. 60 metres in where it is available is used quite a lot by SOTA, and it's interesting that the next conference in 2015 is going to consider a general amateur allocation. So if that gets approved sooner or later, we'll get access to that, and so you'll probably find that SOTA uses that quite a lot because it's often below the critical frequency close in when 40 metres, particularly at night, often is not. Antennas, we see inverted Vs, verticals. SOTA has resulted in a lot of switch pulsars in the UK and throughout Europe. Most summits are low noise. I've found that 2/3 of them, I can sit there with an FT817 and turn all the preamps on and the noise is not moving the S meter. And so that's nice. Then you go to the 1/3 of summits, or maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, maybe a quarter of summits, which has got all this telecommunication stuff up the top, and the S meter tends to move a lot more up there. Mount Wombat, for instance, the 817, a signal on the image frequency needs to be 90 dB up on the main frequency to break through, but I was getting a little bit of image, sort of the image rejection wasn't quite enough in some cases. But some summits it's just fantastic. The noise is so low, and obviously when there's QRN around it's not so low, but sometimes it's just so fantastic. You think like you're on FM, and a signal that comes and is not even moving the S meter can sometimes be really loud. And I know looking at some of the analysis that people have done on the 817, with the preamp on, something that's shown as just underneath S1 is really about an S4, but still you're looking at the noise being right down at maybe 130 even on 20 metres, and like thermal noise is 140, so if the noise floor is at 130, then that's pretty good. VHF, UHF or particularly VHF is the second most used SOTA band. Started off as FM, but in the UK there's quite a lot of SSB. because it just goes further, as anyone who's done VHF contesting would know that. But this is a great band for a lot of innovation. SOTA's driven a lot of, like, because of the requirement that you've got to carry the stuff in. That's led to a lot of innovation, which is where it's really interesting looking on the net and seeing what people have done. Like, I've seen someone with a 13 element 2 metre beam, which has been operating from the top of a summit where they had to walk in, I think, 5k or something. So how they got that there is kind of quite interesting. So it's great band for experimentation. So is 70 centimetres, but it is used a lot less over in Europe. Obviously, it's hard to talk about what's happening here because this is in its infancy. But certainly, what you can do here is work off repeaters to let people know that you're around. But a SOTA contact has to be simplex. And then there's a small band of people, none that I'm aware of in VK, that are into microwave SOTA. You can probably see this, it's pretty flat up the top, so this would have a pretty broad activation area. But what's happened so far is 23 and 3 centimetres have found the most usage on SOTA. There's not a terrible amount on other bands. Obviously, this guy, he's on 3 centimetres. Notice the 817 down there. He's got himself a little pretty good setup to be able to shove in a backpack. But again, it's the technical challenge of being able to carry in and having something that's going to work backpack portable. And then going right down the other end, we've got people that are 160. I'm not aware of anything happening in VK on 160 yet, but it's growing in use in the UK and throughout Europe. This is quite interesting here. You can actually see there's people down there, and this guy's got this massive squid pole with this inverted L happening. You can see the going up then going along there. That's quite an impressive setup, I think, for what's been carried in on a backpack. The mountain here is Mount Snowdon, which is the highest mountain in England and Wales. This is G4YSS, 160 metre inverted L. We talked a little bit about CW before. You don't need to know CW to get involved in SOTA. It gives you more options if you do know it, particularly for activating. It's because obviously in QRP it goes so much further than what SSB does. And then you've got interesting rigs like this. This is an Lcraft KX1, which is a CW transmit-only rig with a little key down there. One of the interesting things about this rig is it's a Class C final, although in CW you can actually get away with using Class E finals. Operates off AA batteries, goes for a long time. Its current on receive is, I think, like 50 milliamps or something. And then you've got homemade rigs that are less flexible than this that have even draw less current. So when you've got to carry it, something like that is very lightweight. I don't have something like that. I use an 817, which is still fairly light, but nowhere near as light as something like that. Going the other way, FM. Getting started in SOTA is easy as taking up a FM handheld up Mount Dandenong and whipping it out and putting out a call. And it's quite interesting. Some of the people that have come up, it's like, well, I didn't think anything happened on 146.5 anymore. We used to monitor this frequency all the time before there were repeaters. And all of a sudden, what's going on now? or people calling, oh, is this a contest or something? But it is an easy way to get started. It's still used in a lot of QSOs around the world because it's just so convenient. Obviously, it's not a weak signal mode. You're not going to be able to activate more challenging summits, more distant from Melbourne, and get your 4 QSOs on FM with any reasonable degree of difficulty. So it does have its limits, but certainly for the nearby summits around Melbourne, it's a lot of fun just to do an FM activation. I did one up on Arthur's Seat. The radio was struggling a little bit with image rejection from the stuff up the top of the hill, but I managed to get, I think, about 8 or 9 contacts. Interesting, all the ones that I did get up there, and And it's also, activations like that are quite interesting because I had a few guys coming up to me asking, what's going on? And I said, oh, talking to someone in Geelong, talking to someone in Melbourne, and they're like, wow, that thing can talk to someone in Melbourne? Like, that's amazing. So it's also quite attractive for getting knowledge of the hobby out there to a broader audience. Power sources. One thing about FM handhelds is they're Class C amplifiers. They're obviously going to be a lot more efficient than what a all-mode rig would be, but it's a weak signal mode. It's not a weak signal mode, so sooner or later, if you're going to push it that step further, if you're going to go to more challenging summits and you want to do 2 metres, you're probably going to need to look at SSB sooner or later. The battery pack that comes with the 817 can go for 1 or 2 hours. But obviously once you're going beyond that, or you're using a 706 or something, or most rigs draw at least an amp on receive, you're going to need to look at something external. Obviously SLAs are used a lot, but they're very heavy. I've done a bit of experimentation with 18650 cells. They've worked pretty well. There's a guy I know who does a lot of model aviation, and they're into LiPo packs. And SOTA in the UK uses a lot of these LiPos as well. I don't see too much of this kind of stuff, but it's allowed, and if you're going to do a longer term activation, you might have to start thinking about it. But whatever it is, you're going to have to carry it in. So solar panels may not always be so convenient, particularly if you've got a long haul to get to the summit. Looking at some of the internet resources, SOTA. This site here is called SOTA Watch, and it's basically like it's an alert facility where people can alert their upcoming activations. It has a spotting facility, and you can zoom in on both of those through. There's a spots only page and alerts only page. There's links to summit lists. It has a reflector of SOTA discussion and a link to the database, as well as links to videos and photos. You can click on each summit, links to the SOTA database, the entries on that summit, and people can post up details of what's happened on any particular activation or so on in relation to that summit. So you might find over time there's more information about particular summits like this. Like when I went to Langigarran a few weeks ago, I talked about the way to get up to the summit. It's off track to get to the top, but there's a track that gets within it's walking for about 2k, but that gets you within about 750 metres of the summit. So that'll build up over time. So as well as these sites, SOTA Data and SOTA Watch and the Reflector, the main SOTA website has the rules, which there's the general rules, and then we'll actually need to scrub out hopefully soon because it is finally up on that website now, the VK3 Association Manual. There's a lot of third-party sites out there. There's this interesting site here called Adventure Radio in Germany that has a lo-fi version of SOTA spots and alerts. You can get KML files to load into Google Earth of all the summits. And there's a whole series of analysis and tools that are available on that website. It's if you want to have a look at who you've worked from a SOTA summit around the world, you can get a DXCC check and other bits and pieces up there, see what summits have activated more than others in a nice little table. So that's a great little tool to use. On Yahoo Groups, there's a group that was set up by Paul VK3IH, SOTA Australia, and that is a VK specific discussion, either activations in VK3 and also discussion outside VK3 as other people are trying to get their stuff happening. We talked about photos and videos that are available through SOTA Watch, and there's quite a lot of interesting ideas that are on there. I got my idea for the quadruple quads that I built from one of those websites that I used during the John Moore contest back in March. And finally, just a little bit about the Keith Roget Memorial National Parks Award. So this is an Amateur Radio Victoria Award, separate from SOTA of course. Some of you are probably familiar with it. But a lot of SOTA summits are in national parks. And so the ones that are, if you activate from those summits, that counts as a Keith Roget contact as well. And so there's sort of a natural sort of link between these two things in VK3. Of course, in this program, your activation simply needs to be within a national park boundary. You can, of course, do it from a car, unlike a SOTA contact. But if you do it away from the car and you do it from a summit that's in a national park, that will be both a Keith Roche and a SOTA contact. In this program, of course, chasers can be anywhere. This award's been going, it's had a first version from 1971 and then conked out, and then it was started again and conked out, but it was relaunched, I think, in 2008 or 2009. And there's quite a number of people that are active in it. But also, because there's a lot more SOTA activity, then there's more Keith Roche activity as well. And that's it. Any questions?
I've got one. I've had a look at the website, the Hilltop Register, look at the description. A lot of them are just numbers. They don't actually tell you a name or where that set of numbers belongs to.
If you look at the SOTA, the main SOTA website, it gives you a grid reference. From the SOTA Watch, this website here, you can look up summits, and that gives you a list. You can click on each summit, and you can then click a link that shows you on Google Maps, or you can download a file that will show it in Google Earth. So they're some of the easiest ways to find out where that thing is.
The file I found listed all of the SOTA regions, listed the hilltop, with a SOTA number. But some of them have just got the SOTA number, they don't have a location or reference of any kind of where it is.
Well, if you go through these resources, every SOTA site every SOTA summit has a reference. And so, and also that stuff off that German website, that gives you, in Google Earth, you can look at where they all are. Just move around in Google Earth as you would, and it's got them all in their spots. So certainly there's quite a number of resources out there that will show you where they are. Some of them don't have names. Like for instance, sometimes a summit might be named, but that's actually not the highest point. There might be a highest point a little bit further back from it. Like for instance, down at Wilson's Prom, Mount Bishop, it's not really a mountain at all, because it's really just a lump on the way up to Mount Leonard. So that sometimes happens where, well, in that case the top is actually named, but sometimes the top is not named at all, and the thing that is named is not the actual highest point. So in that case, sometimes it doesn't have a name, and it's just given the SOTA code as its name.
There's a pickup around Mount Deadering that's got three names, depending on whose paddock you're standing in.
Yeah.
So, what do you call it?
Well, given a name.
Mate, can you use GPS references?
Yes, the VK3 Association manual has got two references that are given for each summit. You have a geometric orientated reference, so degrees south, degrees east, and you also have UTM given. If you can use the geocentric ones in Google Earth easily enough by just cutting and pasting those numbers, and it'll project where that spot is. If you're going to go to a spot that is off track, then you'll probably want to work in UTM. UTM is metric, so the numbers that are given in the association manual are to 100 metres for both the northing and the easting. And so if you know how to use UTM, that'll give you can put that into a GPS and as a waypoint. You can use geocentric ones as well, but if you're going to be navigating, it's not very practical to navigate over ground using geocentric references. So UTM is much more practical, particularly for off-track navigation.
Are there any limitations on what you can use for a power source?
So long as it's not fossil fueled, so no generators. Not obviously we talked about the car, but it can't be something that you put fuel in, and so something that's fossil fueled is not allowed.
So but a fuel cell would be no good.
No, well, no, a fuel cell. A fuel cell is essentially like you've got the hydrogen inside, but whether that's it's not fossil fuel powered in itself. You're not putting petrol in it, but you have to
carry your cylinder up.
Yeah, so that would actually be allowed, a fuel cell. But if you think about it, like a conventional battery, you've still got to charge the thing, and you'll charge it at home, presumably. So, but that's still okay, because you can't, like if there was a power point at the summit, you wouldn't be able to plug in. And that would certainly be against the rules, plugging into some permanent power source.
So an extremely long power cord's no good.
No, extremely long power cord is no good. Any other questions?
Could you use a dynamo or a generator powered on the bicycle?
Yes. Something that's human powered. I think I put a little reference up there, keep pedaling as, as one of the options.
It's still in the air.
So yeah, something that is human powered is certainly permissible. Now, the final method of access to the summit is non-motorised, but that doesn't mean that you can't ride a bike up or ride a horse up.
Take a trolley up.
So as long as it's not powered by some motor, but it's human or animal or whatever powered, then it's permissible.
Maybe the HF10 is horizontal or vertical. What are the preferences there?
Well, whatever works. But
Some situations and others working others.
well, look, a lot of it comes down to whether you're chasing local or DX. And what band and so on. Like, I've been using a vertical antenna that consists of these 75cm aluminium segments that some people have seen me building in the equipment room downstairs. But I chose that because they can all fit in a backpack on its side and not protrude. So particularly if you're going off track, like when I went to Hyde Hill, there was a lot of pushing aside vegetation and ducking and climbing through stuff, and so you didn't walk to the summit, you basically bashed your way up to the summit. And the last thing I wanted was to have some big thing that's getting caught on, like you could get wrapped up and not move in there. You'd have to. So that's why I chose sort of that format, and then I screw them together to form the vertical with a few guide points. The material's sort of fairly flimsy, so it needs a bit of guying to work. But that works pretty well for DX into Europe on 20 metres and works pretty well on 40 metres. 80 metres is getting a little bit stretched in the friendship, but certainly on 20 and 40 it works well. But the other option is squid poles with inverted Vs, which is obviously a lot better for local stuff and can definitely get a good show on 80 metres. So you're not going to work too much DX on something like that, but it'll certainly work well for local. And sometimes it is a bit of a challenge getting 4 contacts locally. I've never had any, like if I've got a reasonably low noise floor, if there's any signal getting through to Europe, I've got 10 stations chasing me just like that. So there's no problem getting 4 contacts there, but sometimes it's a bit of an effort fighting for 4 contacts on 40 metres SSB. And particularly my setup is okay on 40, but on 80 it's really doesn't put out much power on QRP. And of course, once you're sort of getting to dust, you're probably looking at a 200 metre skip zone or something like that on 40. So yeah, it depends on what you want to do. Any other questions?
Is there any preferred calling frequencies?
Well, some of the ones that, like I've been using on 20 metres 14.19 quite a lot, but the problem is a lot of RIDI on that. So it's not, like it's okay in VK, but it's not so good DX. There's traditionally a lot of SOTA stuff's happened on QRP frequencies, but it's kind of shifted a little bit away from just QRP because not all SOTA activity is QRP. But on CW 7.032, 14.063, or 6062 are often places where you see activity. On this website here, if you click on more spots, it comes up with the address label and it says last 12 hours, or you can click up to 72 hours. But you can also type in on the address thing where it says 72, you can put in 300 and you'll get the spots for the last week and a half. And if you go down that list, you'll see the whole range of frequencies that are typically used in SOTA over a week and a half. Gives you a good sort of sample. Any other questions? Alrighty.
Thank you very much, Wayne. I think one of the benefits of working in a job where you can drive around, Wayne will come up during the day. I don't know what you do for a job. I'm going to ask you one day. Seems like a lot of time to walk up hilltops and work. I worked when he was up at Arthur Sid. I was in Northcote driving down High Street and working from there simplex. So, yeah, it was
a quick and dirty, that one. I didn't think that activation was going to happen that morning.
Oh, fair enough. All right, thanks very much. Now, raffle draw.